Hello everyone, it's Mr. Salimata over here, and in today's lesson we'll be looking at solving quadratic equations by completing the square. And by the end of this lesson, every student should be able to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. Now, I've done lessons on factorizing perfect square trinomials and completing the square. So please do check those lessons out. Yes? Okay, so now let's begin this lesson by looking at our first question over here. Yes, now if we look at our first question here, or rather our first equation, it is in the standard form. Yes, so this right here is the standard form of what? Of a quadratic equation. Yes, okay, so let us start by labeling this equation over here. Yes, so this right here will be our A. Yes, it has a leading coefficient of 1. This will be our B, this will be our C, and of course we have our equal sign equal to 0 over there. Yes, okay, so now if you have an equation, if you have an equation in the standard form with a leading coefficient of 1, the first thing that we have to do is we have to move the constant, which is this positive 7 over here, to the other side of the equation. Yes, so let us do that. So we do that by simply subtracting a 7, and we subtract a 7 as well on the other side of the equation, right? And that leaves us with what? That leaves us with x squared plus 8x, yes, positive 7 and negative 7, those two cancel out, yes, equal to 0 minus 7 is negative 7, yes. Okay, so now what would be our next step? Our next step is we have to find a number that we have to add and subtract to this expression over here while keeping the value of the expression. Okay, and how do we find that number? We have to take the half coefficient of x and then we square it, right? Let us look at this general form over here. Yes, so what is the coefficient of x? The coefficient of x is b, right? Okay, so let's take that b, and what did I say? We take the half and then we square it. Okay, so now let's get back to this equation over here, right? What is the coefficient of x? It's 8, right? Okay, so let's bring our 8 there, and then we take the half and then we square it, right? 2 into 8 is what? Is 4. Square that. And 4 by 4 is 16, right? Okay, so now we have this number that we can add to this expression over here and subtract without changing the value of the expression, right? So let us do that. All right, so we shall then have x squared plus 8x, we have to add, plus 16 minus 16 equal to negative 7. Yes, okay, now what will be our next step? Our next step will be what? Will be simplifying our left side of our equation. Yes, so let us start by simplifying this expression over here. Yes, if we look at this expression, this is a perfect square trinomial, so we just have to factorize it in squared binomial. Yes, and how do we do that? We open our brackets. Yes, we take the square root of our first term over here, which is x squared, and the square root of x squared is x. Yes, now we have to find our next term over here. And how do we get that term? We just have to take half the coefficient of x. Yes, and in our case, our half coefficient of x will be what? 8 divided by 2. That will be what? That will give us positive 4, right? So we shall then have positive 4 in there. Square it, remember, minus 16 equal to negative 7, right? Now, we still have to deal with this constant over here. Then we have another constant here. So these are like terms, right? So we can group them together by simply adding our 16 on our left side of the equation, and we also add a 16 on the other side of the equation. Negative 16 plus 16, those two cancel out, and we shall be left with what? X plus 4 squared, yes, equal to, right? Negative 7 plus 16 is what? Is 9. Yeah? Okay, so now, what will be our next step? Our next step is we have to get rid of the exponent there, or rather the index. And we can do that by square rooting both sides of the equation. Yes, so let us do that. So let's take the square root. Yes, okay, just allow me to write this 9 here. Yeah, and we take the square root. Now when we take a square root, we shall have two possibilities, which is going to be a positive or a negative. Yes, now the square root and our exponent or index, there are two, those two cancel out, right? So then we shall be left with what? With x plus 4 equal to, what's the square root of 9? That's 3, right? So we have positive and negative 3. Okay, so now our next step will be what? We'll be finding the value of x. Yes, okay, so now how do we do that? Okay, so allow me to write it here. Yes, that's our next step. Okay, let me just use my red marker right there to show it. Okay, so then our next step will be what? Let's take the positive 3. Okay, let's deal with positive 3. So then we shall have x plus 4 equal to 3. Okay, so we have to find the value of what? Of x. So we just subtract 4 on both sides of our equation. Positive 4 and negative 4, those cancel out. We shall be left with x equal to 3 minus 4 gives us what? Negative 1. So we have found our first solution, but remember we still have to deal with negative 3. Yes, so that will be x plus 4 equal to negative 3. And what are we doing? We just subtract a 4 both sides of our equation. Positive 4 and negative 4, those cancel out, and we shall be left with x equal to negative 3 minus 4, that's negative 7. Yes, so we have found our two x values over there. Yes, okay, so now let us continue by looking at our second question over here, and let us label our equation. Yes, so we have our a. Yes, this equation also has a leading coefficient of 1, and then our b, our c, and of course our equal to 0 over there. Yes, okay, so now what did we say? We said if you have a quadratic equation in standard form with a leading coefficient of 1, the first thing that we have to do is we have to move the constant to the other side of our equation. So let us do that by simply subtracting a 16 on both sides of our equation, right? And what are we going to be left with? We shall be left with x squared plus 10x, yes, positive 16 and negative 16, those cancel out. Yes, 0 minus 16, that leaves us with what? Negative 16. What's our next step? Our next step is to find a number that we can add and subtract to this expression over here without changing the value of the expression. And we said we can find that number by what? By taking the half coefficient of x and then we square it. Yes, and in our case, so what we mean is, yes, and in our case, coefficient of x is 10. Yes, so let's take the 10 take the half and then square it, right? 2 into 10 is what? Is 5. Then we square it, yes? And 5 by 5 is 25, yes? Okay, so now let us add and subtract this number over here, yes, while keeping the value of the expression, right? So we shall then have x squared plus 10x plus 25 minus 25 equal to negative 16. Okay, let us simplify our left side of the equation. Let us take this expression over here. That's a perfect square trinomial, so we can what? We can factorize it into squared binomial. Yes, and how do we do that? We open our brackets. Yes, what's the square root of x squared? That's x. Yes, now we have to find our other term in the bracket, and we do that by what? Taking the half coefficient of x. Yes, so 2 into 10 is what? Is positive 5, then we square it. Minus 25 equal to negative 16. Yes, so now we have these two like terms together. Yes, we have these two like terms here. So we can what? We can group them, right? So we just add a 25 and add a 25 as well on the other side of the equation. Negative 25 and positive 25, those cancel out. Then we shall be left with x plus 5 squared equal to negative 16 plus 25. What's that? That's just 9. Yes? Positive 9. All right? Our next step here will be what? Our next step will be getting rid of the exponent or the index. And how do we do that? We just square root, take the square root, both sides of the equation, right? So let's do that. Yes, so our other side will be plus and minus, yes? Because we're going to have two possibilities, right? Okay, so now these two cancel out. We shall be left with what? With x plus 5 equal to, what's the square root of 9? That's positive what? That's 3. Yes, the square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so now our next step here will be what? We'll be solving for x, right? So let's solve for the first equation, which is positive 3. Okay, so we shall then have x plus 5 equal to 3. Remember, we're using positive 3. All right. Okay, so let's find the value of x. We just subtract 5 and do the same on the other side of the equation. Positive 5 and negative 5, those cancel out. We shall be left with x equal to 3 minus 5. What does that give us? That gives us negative 2. Okay, now let us deal with our negative part. Yes, the negative 3. So that will be x plus 5 equal to negative 3. Yes, we're finding the value of x, so we just subtract 5 both sides of our equation. Positive 5 and negative 5, those two cancel out. We shall be left with x equal to negative 3 minus 5. That's what? That's negative 8. Yes, so we have found our other x value. Yeah, okay, so now let's look at our third and last question. Yes, and as you can see, this question over here is also in what? In the standard form, right? Okay, so now let us label it. So this is our A, this is our B, this is our C, of course equal to 0, right? And as you can see with this equation, it has the leading coefficient of what? Of 1, right? So what do we have to do? We just have to move this constant to the other side of the equation. And how do we do that? We just subtract 11 both sides of our equation, right? Positive 11 and negative 11, those two cancel out, and we shall be left with what? With x squared minus 7, x equal to 0 minus 11 is what? Is negative 11. So what will be our next step? Our next step will be looking for a number that we have to add and subtract to this expression right here while keeping the value of the expression. And how do we do that? How do we find that number? We find that number by taking half the coefficient of x and then we square it, right? So we're talking about, yes, and what's our coefficient of x? Negative 7, all right? So negative 7 over 2 and then square it. Now, I won't advise you to divide 2 into negative 7 at this point, all right? All you have to do is just square your numerator and your denominator, okay? So let's do that. We have our negative 7 there, we're squaring it, and then we have our 2, we square that as well. Let's find the value of our numerator. Negative 7 by negative 7, that's what? That's positive 49. 2 by 2, that's 4. Okay, so this is a number that we have to add and subtract to this expression while keeping the value of the expression, right? So let us do that. So then we shall have what? X squared minus 7x, we're adding, plus 49 over 4 minus 49 over 4 equal to negative 11. Yeah? Okay. What will be our next step? Our next step will just be simplifying our left side of our equation, right? Let's look at this expression. It's a perfect square trinomial. So we can what? We can factorize it into squared binomial. And how do we do that? We open our brackets. What's the square root? What's the square root of x squared? X. Yeah? Now we have to find our other term in our bracket. And how do we do that? We take half coefficient of what? Of x. And our coefficient of x is what? Is negative 7. Right? So all we have to do is what? Take the half. And that's what? We're dividing by 2, right? So it will be negative 7 over 2. We square that. Minus 49 over 4 equal to negative 11. Okay? Now we have these two like terms. So we just have to group them. Let me just write my next step right here. I'll just take it there. Okay? Yeah? So, what do we have to do? We just have to add 49 over 4 to both sides of our equation. So, these two cancel out and we shall be left with what? X minus 7 over 2. We're squaring it. Equal to negative 11 plus, yes, we're adding 49 over 4. Okay, now this right here, we're now dealing with what? With fractions. So let's deal with this fraction. Okay, so we shall have what? Negative 11 over 1. Now 1 into negative 11 is negative 11. So we're still dealing with the same number. Okay? Plus 49 over 4. Okay? Now, talking about fractions, I've done a lesson on adding, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying fractions. So please do check those lessons out. All right? Okay, so now let's move on. So we just have to find lowest common denominator. Yes, and what's the lowest common denominator of 1 and 4? It's 4, right? So what do? We just multiply our denominator by 4 and numerator by 4. Negative 11 by 4 is what? Negative 44. 1 multiplied by 4 is 4 plus 49 over 4. We have the common denominator, so all we have to do is just add our what? Our numerator, right? We add our numerators there. Sorry about that. Yes, so negative 44 plus 49. What's that? That's 5, right? Positive 5 over 4. So there we go. This is the number that we're going to have on our right side of the equation. So therefore, we shall have what? X minus 7 over 2 squared, yes, equal to 5 over 4. What will be our next step? We have to get rid of the exponent, or rather the index, by just what? Taking the square root, both sides of our equation. Yes, we shall have plus and minus. So these two cancel out. Then we shall have x minus 7 over 2 equal to, let's look at this this term right here, right? We can actually rewrite this as square root of 5 over square root of 5 over square root of 4, right? And if we look at this number down here, this, we can simplify it. What's the square root of 4? That's 2. So then what are we going to have? We shall have what? X minus 7 over 2 equal to plus or minus square root of 5 over 4. Sorry, over 2. Yeah? Okay, so now let us work out our two equations, because we have two equations, yes? One involving positive and the other one involve what? Negative. Let's go with the positive one. So we shall have x minus 7 over 2 equal to, we're using the positive one, square root of 5 over 2. Okay? Let us what? Get rid of what? Of 7 over 2, so we can find the value of x. And how do we do that? We just add 7 over 2 to both sides of our equation. These two cancel out. We shall be left with what? With x equal to 7 over 2 plus square root of 5 over 2. Okay? That right there is our what? Our first solution. Let's deal with the negative part, okay? X equal to, x minus 7 over 2 equal to negative the square root of 5 over 2, okay? We're finding the value of x, yes, so we just add 7 over 2 to both sides of our what? Of our equation. These two cancel out. We shall be left with x equal to 7 over 2 minus square root of 5 over 2. So there we go. We have found our what? Our other solution there. Yes? All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you in my next lesson.